Welcome back to another episode of The Wrong Idea. In case you're unfamiliar, being wrong is about embracing subjective experience over objective truth. We're not interested in being correct, we just want to explore our own ideas and opinions. I'm Lucas, here with my brother Jack. What have you got for us this week?
Well, this week I was doing my daily dose of unhealthy scrolling through Instagram, and I saw this reel with Tony Robbins, who may have one of the most funny voices for a motivational speaker I've ever heard. I was talking to Theo Vaughn, who's a hilarious comedian, and he was diving into this whole idea of when you believe something is true, you'll find evidence for it. And he gave Theo this test. And for any of those who are listening, you can try this yourself. He said, look around a room and find everything that you can see that is brown. He gives him a couple of seconds and he looks back. He's like, all right, close your eyes and now tell me everything you saw that was red. And right, obviously, Theo just saw the things that were brown in the room. And that was his example of, well, you're looking for things that are brown, so you're going to find things that are brown. And he's like, I will guarantee that you probably saw some stuff that were, burgundy or not burgundy, like beige, and lumped it in with the brown category just because you think it's brown and it's close enough. So it was this whole point that whatever you believe will become self-evident because it's what you're searching for.
Yeah, so you're kind of talking about this idea that whatever it is that we believe sort of manifests in reality as we experience it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very true. Like, there was I can't remember when it was, we had a new car in the family and it was black. And all of a sudden we just started noticing that there's like so many black cars. Like every fifth car that we see was black. And that definitely hadn't changed. But just because you have this black car, you're noticing more black cars around you. It's super interesting.
Yeah, well, what we believe is going to shape what we pay attention to, right? So one obvious thing that comes to mind for me is confirmation bias, where sort of what you expect to be true, you will look for in the world so you can confirm what it is that you already believe. You can be sure that, oh yeah, I'm right about this because I just saw an example that checks the box that is like, oh, I believe this anyway. So yeah, of course that's why it happened. But maybe you're just looking for what you expect to see, and in reality it could be very different, or you might just not even be paying attention to the examples where it doesn't hold true.
For sure. I want to preface this by saying I don't think this is like a practice that'll just like make you delusional, because like you're just starting to believe stuff that you want to be true and you'll find stuff that's true for it. I think that the point of this is that you can use this as a tool to help aid you in your thinking and your like betterment as a person, because if you're getting really bogged down and held back because you're thinking all of these negative thoughts, and I'll get into this a bit, but your brain loves negativity, you will just find all of these negative things and dwell on them and overthink about them, and it just drags you back. But if you can start to search for the good things, then like you said, it becomes your focus. You're focusing on those instances. So it's really powerful.
This brings to mind just the concept of the mind-body connection in general. I feel like so often people are willing to accept that their environment can influence their mind, but aren't so open-minded to the idea that our mind can then influence reality the other way. What we believe and what we think in our minds, our mental state, can actually manifest in the real world.
It's so interesting because the brain is so incredibly powerful. We were texting about this once, and I have a very firm belief that your mind can't be tricked into believing things, because I think that if your mind is believing of a concept or an idea, it's just been convinced of it. And it's not necessarily been like, tricked into, thinking, oh, I feel great, because really you can throw on a fake smile, but at that point to me you're just believing that you're happy. You not really tricked your mind into doing anything, because the second it's done, it's going to go back to its old way of however it was thinking. So it just feels like your mind can't be lied to. So you need to know ways around it.
Well, so this is such an interesting point, and I think I know what you're talking about, but I want to get to the crux of it. For example, I obviously, well, as you know, spent a lot of time when I was younger doing magic as a magician, right?
Oh, yes.
So the whole point of being a magician, I feel like, is to actually trick other people's minds. So, in a sense, I actually do think that your mind can be fooled, but I think that you're saying something different. Because at that point, I've done something to make you believe that you saw something or experienced something, even if it didn't happen, because I've tricked you, like your mind believes that that is reality. And I think you're saying that because that is the case, that essentially is your reality, whether or not it's true in the physical world.
Yeah, precisely. That's what I'm trying to get at, because it's in a sense of like this is why this like idea made me come to this conclusion, and this like whole kind of like crux of this episode is like, well, your reality is self-evident based upon what's going on in your head, regardless of whether or not it's what's actually happening or not.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by the term self evident?
Self-evident is just like it's sort of I'm using it in a sense to mean that it's just obvious to you. Say you're just like playing tennis, like because that's my sport. That's what I play for my school, and I'm thinking like, oh, I'm hitting like crap today, but like really, I'm actually playing sort of all right, and I'm gonna focus on the 6 balls that I hit out of 30 balls, and I'm not focusing on the 24 other good ones that I hit. Then it's more evident to me that like I am playing badly.
Okay, but then somehow you're also saying that in believing that you're playing badly, you will then create the reality of continuing to play badly because you just believe that that is now what's happening. So your ability to play well, maybe if you just instead thought, oh, that was just a fluke, I'm still going to play well, then you have a much better chance of actually performing better.
Absolutely, because tennis is an incredibly mental sport. It's interesting in the fact that there's a book called Inner Tennis, and I'm in this section which is talking about visualization, and it's basically gave this example where he was coaching this person, and they're like, I want to hit my shots deeper and harder, and he's like, okay, I'm not gonna like dwell on all this time to tell you how to fix your form. Just envision a stroke that has the ball doing those things, and then try and replicate it. And I think it was like within 10 or 15 shots, their balls were like doing exactly what they wanted them to do. And it was simply because they were like, thinking in their head, okay, this is what I want my stroke to look like. And then all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, they're doing exactly that.
I've heard about this in general in sports and actually in a number of different things, but I think there's something even deeper here where you are, by visualizing it, you are making it feel more real, and you actually are convincing yourself. You're sort of building this belief that, oh, if I hit it this way, it will do this. And that starts to build exactly the mindset you're talking about of, now I believe that I'm capable of hitting this shot this way, therefore I just need to execute on it.
Yeah, for sure. This whole idea to me gets into like where my whole mind started going, holy moly, this is actually interesting. And it's what I like to think of, and I talk to my friends about, as like air quotes, like mastering your own mind, because I think that as every person's brain is so different, like it's a whole like muscle mush in your head that somehow works miraculously well in conducting all of these like systems and stuff. It's incredibly important to know your own mind, because nobody will know it better than you.
That's for sure. It's your mind.
Yeah, literally. I mean, if anybody does, then either they're egotistical or you've got a problem. But I think that the biggest key to getting to know yourself is really, really internalizing being comfortable with like who you are and not trying to lie to yourself.
Okay, so that's actually where I wanted to go with this. So you were talking about, did you put it as knowing yourself? Was that the main term?
Yeah, knowing yourself.
Okay, so I want to understand or unpack what that means to you. So for me, when I think about knowing myself, there's a question of, does that just mean that I understand myself? Or it sounds more like what you're saying is there's also an aspect of coming to terms with, okay, now that I understand this, I can use it to better myself just because I am aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a relationship that you have with your own mind. I think, and it's deep. It's probably deeper than any relationship that you form with anybody else if you can do it correctly. But it's most definitely important to, use your own knowledge to help you improve upon yourself, because really it's easy once you can remove self-judgment to start improving upon those things for yourself. Because if you are failing, really, it should basically just be reflecting inside of your mind. So we'll take like a random example. Say like you're innately forgetful, like you're just naturally a forgetful person. It's not something bad necessarily, but it's just something that you can work on. But like if you start to view it as something bad, that's where I think there is a problem.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying because in that example, if you're just a forgetful person, you recognize that about yourself and you go, yes, I tend to forget these things a lot. So what can I do about that? Oh, maybe I'll come up with a better system for making note of something, or I'll try to figure out some organizational system that will help me not miss too many things. And so then at least you're being proactive because you've recognized this trait in yourself and you've acknowledged it as real, and then you're just trying to figure out how to work around it or use it the best way that you can, not seeing it as a fault.
Right, yeah, because I think even being forgetful probably has some good qualities to it. Like, if you're somewhat forgetful, it's probably a little bit easier to forgive people. And there's definitely aspects of it which you don't want to throw away because it's you. And I think that every quality that you have has to have some sort of value. But if there are aspects of it which are negatively impacting your life, then the only thing you should do with that is just take it as somewhere for you to work, because life will become boring and stagnant if you don't have things to work on and improve upon. And everybody does, but it's just whether or not they can like be comfortable with the fact that, okay, I've got my shortcomings, but they're not like bad. They're just areas that I can focus on for improvement.
Yeah, it's just who I am. Let me ask you this question. Based on what you've just told me, I want to come back to the idea of knowing yourself. So what I'm hearing now is that it's about developing the relationship between your conscious and subconscious mind. Does that sound reasonable?
Incredibly reasonable.
So I have told you a couple of times about some of the things that I do where I had to understand a lot about how to utilize my subconscious. And what I tend to do is do things very consciously at first and then try to move them into subconscious processes. When I want to figure something out, I will have worked out those problems in very intricate detail, very consciously. But then sometimes what I really want is just an intuitive answer. So I'll, rather than trying to think about why something is correct, I will just let my brain go, what sounds right? And then let that kind of subconscious bubble up and give me something that I wasn't expecting. And if you can train your subconscious better to do that kind of stuff, you can find that you'll save yourself a lot of conscious effort. So ultimately, it is freeing and powerful. But in order to be able to do that, you have to become very comfortable with how your subconscious works and how to communicate with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember we had this is probably like a 3 hour discussion that we had one night, and it was so mind-boggling to think about, because the ways in which I have not noticed that my subconscious works. And it's like you said, it's really offloading a lot of the conscious processes that you do to your subconscious, which is where it's really powerful. I think the best example is using like professional athletes. Like, a professional athlete doesn't need to think about every part of what they're doing. Take a basketball player. They're not thinking about every aspect of their shooting form, from how they catch the ball to bending their knees to bringing their arms up to shooting and holding their follow through and whatever. They're not thinking about that. They've done it so many times that their mind is just catch, and all they think is, do I have a good shot? I'm going to shoot. That's it. But for most people, they have to do all of this thinking. And that's what really separates and differentiates the people who are like good or okay from great and then like professionals and experts. Because frankly, not everybody can do that with, like just like all practices. It's an incredibly unique skill.
I actually realized that I was doing this when someone questioned me about it. They gave me a question and I like came back with an answer very quickly that turned out to be correct. And they asked me, how did you know that that was right? And I was like, I didn't know that it was right. I just said what I thought made sense. And they were like, oh, that's interesting, because normally it would take me a few steps to work through that. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. And I wanted to see if what I said worked. And if it did, then that's great. Otherwise, we could go through those steps consciously. But it didn't occur to me that that's what was happening. And the reason is, or at least the point I'm trying to get at, is I trust my subconscious. And I've gotten to a point where I had to work to get there, because it's weird to suddenly just like trust that your instincts might be right, especially if you don't have, say, a particularly nice view of yourself. If you don't love yourself or care about yourself, to listen to your subconscious is maybe a difficult thing to do.
100%. I love the like example of having that instance where you can like just draw a conclusion without having to go through any of the steps, because it really highlights how powerful your subconscious mind is, because it's far more powerful than your conscious mind. Your conscious mind is, very slow. In a sense, it's like the difference between, we were doing this last night, like reading something word for word versus like taking every like third or fourth word and then kind of filling in the gaps with which you've already written, which is very interesting. But you also mentioned trusting it, and I think that is so difficult for so many people to do, because trusting your subconscious is, in a little bit of a sense, kind of just like believing in something that you can't see. It's super foreign and a little bit scary.
Faith.
Yeah, exactly. It's blind faith. For people to develop that skill, and let alone learn to trust it, are two completely different things, but they're both incredibly difficult. It's something which I think that for people to do, you said it requires an incredibly like positive view of yourself. And I think this ties perfectly back to that first point that I made of, to have that positive view of yourself, you're going to find things which are like positive about yourself that you do. But if you're not thinking that way, then this trust for your subconscious will never develop, and it will never manifest into a useful skill.
So let me see if I can get the one-liner from that. I would say knowing yourself requires you to trust yourself, which equates to having positive or high self-worth.
That is pretty damn perfect. I don't know if I could say that any better myself. There was a quote from Mike Tyson that he said on a podcast, and he just said, your mind is not your friend. And I've taken that quote so many different ways, because in a sense, it's the knowledge that your mind will not naturally do good things for you. You have to actively make sure that your mind isn't working against you to try and, like defeat you, because subconsciously, you're probably not going to have such positive beliefs about yourself. For whatever reason, your mind is just innately negative. And once you begin to actively work against that, then, like you said, you begin to have this higher self-worth, and you begin to trust yourself, which might be more difficult than trusting other people.
I agree with that completely. I think trusting yourself is probably one of the hardest things possible. And I wanted to ask you, where do you feel self-worth comes from?
That's a fascinating question. I think that self-worth has to come from different places for different people depending upon the scenario. But if I want to give an example, if you want to define your own self-worth as, say, a thinker, you're trying to, how good am I at thinking? just in general, you have to figure out how you feel personally, not what other people are telling you. How do you really feel about it? If other people are telling you you're doing great, but you inside don't feel like you're really doing that great because you know some of the things are just like glossed over on the surface and they can't see behind the curtains, then maybe your self-worth isn't as high as people depict it to you to be.
So this is interesting because you are thinking a lot about the perception of our worth, but I want to keep this very focused on the self for a second because I can't see how our worth could be derived from other people. What I mean is, I think that a lot of us are concerned with how other people perceive us and what our worth is to others. But I want to get at this real idea of self-worth. Like, what is it? Where does it really come from at the level of I feel that I have worth regardless, let's say, of whoever else is around me and whatever else is happening. I just am valuable as a human being.
It's so interesting because I think that one of the problems people run into when determining their own self-worth is that worth to others. But I think for determining raw self-worth, the best way to do it is seeing whether or not you're reaching your goals. Because realistically, if you are reaching your goals, developing, bettering yourself, then to me, you have about as high of a self-worth as you're going to get because you're doing everything you can to make you the best version of yourself that you can be.
I love it, but I think you're talking about measuring your worth. I'm actually trying to flip this way right back on its head, back to your original point. I think our self worth comes from believing that we are valuable. I think it's literally this idea that it doesn't come from anywhere, where it comes from believing that you are worthy.
That actually makes so much sense. Wow, that like is this gonna take it like a second to sink in, but like well, the first thing that's coming through to me is just like, yeah, that like certainty that you have in yourself creates that self-worth in itself, just the concept of it. And when you don't have self-worth, you are innately like not having that belief in yourself. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah. And I think this is interesting because today I had to write a timed essay in my AP language class for talking about the relationship between certainty and doubt. And one of the things that I highlighted a lot was that concept of like belief in yourself, because without having belief in yourself, nobody else has a right to believe in you anyways.
I see. I love that you went there because that's actually the line I try to use with other people as well, which is like, why should I see you as having any worth if you don't see yourself as having worth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the example that I used in my essay was it was talking about the movie Air, which was all about how Sonny Vaccaro had this like incredible belief that Michael Jordan was going to be an incredible athlete, and Phil Knight was like, "No, let's just take like 5 players out of the top 10 and spread our eggs out a little bit." But he had so much belief that Michael was going to turn into this great athlete that he like budged Phil and they signed Michael, and bada bing bada boom, that might be the greatest partnership in all of sports history. But if Sonny probably didn't have that self-worth to think like, okay, yeah, I trust my ability as a basketball scout, there's no way that ever happens.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of pressure from other people to tell you that you're wrong. And if you believe that you are right and you feel it strongly, you should try to stand up for it. You can only do that if you believe that your opinions matter and that you have value to offer the world.
I mean, I think that's how leaders operate in whole, rather, is that if a leader of anything, a club, maybe a team, like in one of my racing is my favorite sport, team principal, doesn't believe in their strategy, man, the pit crew, the drivers, the engineers have nothing to follow. And it just causes problems on problems. And it's so incredibly important for the people who believe in themselves to trust their gut. Because if they don't, then you have no leaders. You have nobody to take direction and guide. You have nobody to help move forward.
So I want to just acknowledge for a second that what we're talking about is critically important, and belief in oneself can do a lot for you. But it is important to recognize that this is sort of an oversimplification in the sense that you can't just believe good things and suddenly experience all of these rewards from the world. And there are external factors that can influence our mindset and our experiences that are outside of our own internal control. So we can only do so much, but I think it's very important to do this because it is within your power to change what you believe about yourself. And even if we can't control everything, we can control that. And it can make such a big difference that I want to make sure it's clear that all we're advocating for here is just trusting in who you are and seeing where it can get you. Because for us, it's been something that worked fabulously so far.
Yeah, that's a wonderful note, because I think that you're right. This is an incredibly difficult thing to do, but really it all boils down to, as long as you believe in yourself and you are able to focus on the things that you can control and not try and dwell on the things that you can't, then at the very least, you will have the belief that you yourself are doing everything that you can.
Yeah. And my belief is that we would probably all be better off if each of us believed that we could make the world better.
100%. I would love to walk into any room and sit around and chat with people that all think that their ideas are the things that can solve the problems that we all have. Because, man, the discussions and the movement in society would be so dynamic and incredible. It's almost unfathomable.
And this is actually, a big theme of our show is just this idea that let's all share our wrong ideas and learn from each other and grow.
Absolutely. Growing from others is so, so, so important, because that's really going to be one of the only ways to do it, because the knowledge that you have within yourself is quite limited. But, having people to bounce ideas off of, or even using AI to bounce your ideas off of, deepens your understanding in so many ways, because most concepts can be interwoven into others, and you begin to start making connections and learning all of these different things. And man, is it fun. It's powerful.
Okay, so we talked about this idea that we create our self-worth. And I want to go even one level further down from that, which is, how do we create that belief? How does that belief arise? How do we start trusting that even if I believe that's true, how can I have faith in it? For me, the word that comes to mind is authenticity. And I find that when I act authentically in the world, I am able to calibrate how the world responds to me. And I can understand what I need to explore, what I need to give, and what I need to believe in order to be effective in the world. And it comes from just accepting that I have my limitations, I have my strengths, my weaknesses, and I'm going to do whatever I can to try to make some sort of impact, some sort of difference for the better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfect, because really it's all you can do. Like we said, you're in control of only you and yourself. And if you have that vibe that you give off to other people, that you have such a strong confidence in yourself, you're so comfortable with who you are, then eventually your influence upon other people grows so great that you don't need to worry anymore. You are the person that you thought that you wanted to be, simply because you trust yourself more than somebody else does.
So the point of all of that is that if you find it hard to start believing in yourself, the action to take is to just act authentically, act in a way that makes you feel like you are being genuinely yourself. And I want to talk about this journey a little bit as well, because it's something that I've done over my life, but it's taken me stages. I didn't always like who I was as much as I do today. And I think that to get from a place where you don't like yourself or even despise yourself or whatever it may be, to get to a place where you could love yourself and believe in yourself is an important process. So I'll give you my steps and you can tell me if these resonate with you. I think first comes recognizing yourself. Who am I? Who am I versus who I want to be, I guess is what I'm saying there. And then respect yourself. Be aware of what works for you. Then would come accept yourself. Embrace what is uniquely yours. And finally, empower yourself, which I would say project yourself authentically.
I mean, 1000%. I mean, I'll run through the 4 of those. Recognizing yourself is quite, I think, easy as long as you are able to, like we said, just be comfortable with who you are, because anything that you have negative thoughts or beliefs or positive thoughts or belief all lie within your mind. And recognizing those things is fairly conscious because, it's what happens every day. And then respecting yourself. Self-respect is so, so, so important, because showing that you respect yourself represents this baseline that you have for yourself and even everybody else. And having that not only makes sure that you take care of yourself and are, loving to yourself, but everybody else will see that. And that grows their respect and love for you and their admiration for you. And it makes them want to support you a lot, because I've even noticed that myself. Once you start respecting who you are as a person, people are more inclined to want to support you through what you're doing. But then, you go into accepting yourself. That is so incredibly difficult. There are parts of myself that I haven't even accepted yet. And I'm sure that probably goes for most people, even you. Being able to accept all of the bad things that there are about you, you don't even call them bad, but just places that you need to work, is incredibly difficult, because frankly, it's not really a nice thing to have to believe, but it is crucial in being able to, like you said, that 4th step of empowering yourself, because the power comes from being able to work and recognize that work is so, so, so rewarding and so much fun to do once you start getting into it, because all the fear that you have quickly dissipates once you realize that moving forward will get you going in the direction that you want to go, and staying in the same place will hang you up.
Yeah, well said. I think this summarizes everything that we're talking about here and just emphasizes the power of your own thoughts, your mind, the way that you perceive the world and the beliefs that you have, and the importance of building a strong belief system.
Oh yeah, building a belief system. I mean, I can think of practices of building your own belief system, but being concrete with who you are as a person helps you become more authentic. This is something that you even talked to me about, and we'll briefly brace over this, but like knowing what you think is even right from wrong, because that's incredibly subjective, is important to helping you make decisions. And that sort of is one of those subconscious processes that you want to be into form for yourself. You don't want to think about, every scenario and every situation is right or wrong. You want to just be able to kind of go, oh, wait, maybe I don't like that. Let me take a step back here. And it sort of trains your subconscious to prompt your conscious mind to start thinking about things.
So much fruit for thought here. I love all of these ideas, but I think I'm going to wrap us up for this week. Thanks for bringing this to the table today. I really enjoyed the discussion.
Absolutely. It was great fun. We got through so many things, and I'm sure a lot of these things at the end of this episode we will touch on in future episodes. But if you guys want some more content before next week, you can find us at The Wrong Idea on Instagram, TikTok, and X, and we'll see you then.
Got a thought that challenges the norm? We want to hear it. Post your wrong idea with the hashtag #WrongIdea. That's RONG idea. And join the conversation. Who knows? Your perspective might just be featured in a future episode. Remember, in a world of endless perspectives, all ideas are wrong ideas. Until next time, keep thinking, keep challenging, and keep embracing the unconventional.